All right. Good morning to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning also to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, also co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for joining us wherever you're watching from. As you well know, every single week we try to give you the goings on in entertainment and pop culture, if you will, with our segment known as This Week in Pop Culture, trying to catch you up on the goings on, as I said, across entertainment. And of course, I'm not alone in talking about these said topics. So without further ado, I want to welcome my co-host, Mr. Spillman Trueheart, aka Spills. What's going on, sir?
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Back again for another week of
Yes, sir.
effects.
Yes, sir.
They
Yes,
call me
sir.
Spilly Doll. That's what they call me. Gang,
So,
gang, gang, gang.
gay. So, with that out of the way, let's hop into these topics. I wanted to, and we have a full show. We have a lot to get into, so we're not going to keep you guys waiting. I'm gonna hop into our first one, which is centered around the world of sports, talking to NBA. We had a lot that went down this week, so Spillman, some of it's going to cover, my team. Some of it's going to cover your team, and a couple of teams in between. So let's
Uh-huh.
get into it. Let's get
Yeah, we
into
could we could talk about our teams this week.
it. You don't sell too enthused, but here we go.
Here we
As
go.
I said, this has been an interesting week. I'll start first. I wanted to get into some of the surprises as well as some of the givens as it pertains to various teams across the NBA. Which I feel, there are teams that are really showing us who they are or what they're capable of, even this early into the season. I'll start with some of our givens, and that's starting with the Celtics and the Lakers. The Celtics, obviously, if you're not aware, they are the defending champions of last year. Currently, they're sitting at 8-2, which is second in the East, and they're really firing all cylinders, whether it's with their defense or with their offense. Spillman, do you feel that the pace that this team is playing with currently is sustainable, and they're going to be able to continue, this pace that they're playing at? Because they're not even playing with a full deck with their full lineup. That's the scary thing. But go ahead.
Oh, yes, for sure. I think that is the scary thing, but I think that nothing changed from this year to last year, except for the Cavs being nice. But the Celtics having the best defensive backcourt in the NBA, also possibly having the best, one of the best defensive front courts in the NBA with
Yes.
Porzingis and the two wings, Brown and Tatum.
Yes.
I just think it's you know, the rich get richer. The stock market is up and the Celtics are winning again. I don't see how you couldn't see this coming. Even back to last year when we were talking about them in the playoffs, I didn't see how, if you got to play them 7 games, how you could beat them 4 of them times. Like it's
Yeah.
just too much. They
Yeah.
they have they almost could switch personnel like a hockey team does and not move a beat. Like they can almost switch out 5 guys and still be on you like anybody else. So to me, it's not surprising that they're still doing good. And also, like we said earlier, they got that chip on their shoulder. They
I
are
do.
upset because
I'm glad you
people
brought that up. Yes. Go
been
ahead.
disrespecting them. They've been disrespecting them, talking about Jason Tatum is not the best player, and then they didn't put Jalen on the team, and they put his buddy Derek White instead of him. So, I guess they're the best team. The Cavs obviously look like gangbusters. And I wonder about them in the playoffs. If those two teams match up in the conference finals, what would happen with those two? Because as it stands, it looks like they could go at each other. How do you feel about them?
So I'll say this: a lot of it you've already shared. So I'll try not to like repeat some of the things that you said. But as I said, it's scary that they are not even functioning at full strength, and they're still demonstrating the versatility. As you mentioned, being able to switch on things. They have a great deal of versatility with their lineup. Their wings are huge. I mean, what Jason Tatum is, what, 6'7", 6'8", like, and he has length. The same thing with Jalen Brown, and it's not like they're slow wings. They are athletic wings. And the thing that's really crazy is, as you said, people have been sleeping on the Celtics, saying last year that they had a easy run at the title. And they were consistently great throughout the entire season, even when other teams were having their times of momentum throughout the season. They didn't really miss a beat. If you really look at what they accomplished over that season, they didn't really miss a beat the entire season. So they were clearly far and above everybody else that entire season. And to say that they had an easy run at the title is very disrespectful to me. The same goes for how, just as you said, how while, of course, happy that the USA basketball team won the gold, I do feel that what was done during that time was not accidental. I feel like in thinking in the way that Kerr may have strategized, because we have to remember, growing up as a player, being in the NBA as a player, he was around a lot of those same set players that tried to utilize everything to be able to get an edge. We keep forgetting he was a teammate of Jordan's. He played with the Spurs with brain farting the coach's name with
Popovich.
Popovich. Thank you. And with that championship pedigree, you're able to pull some things in that experience of that time as a player, whether you're observing how your coach operates, whether you're observing how your teammates operate. Even if you are not the star player, you start to take on a lot of that same mentality and that same mantra, if you will, in having that experience. And I feel like he tried to utilize that as a platform. I have no proof of this, and don't get me wrong. I'm gonna he's the coach of my team, but I will be objective. I feel like he utilized that as a way to kind of psychologically get in the head of those players, so that way when the NBA season came, it would dismantle that team from within, because of getting in the head of Jason Tatum, of making him feel like he's not a capable player, of pulling other players that are on his team to be on the USA team, to kind of create some schism, hoping that it will create some schism between the teammates. And unfortunately, it backfired, where you had the teammates that were on the team felt that he should have been a part of it. It didn't create any schism in between them, and it provided that extra added juice. Not that they needed any extra juice, but it provided that extra added juice to come into the next season with a mission in mind of being able to repeat with their championship. So, and the thing that's crazy too, another part that I will give a lot of credit to when we're talking about Jason Tatum as well. He wasn't very, unprofessional in terms of how he responded, of how things were going. He didn't have some huge tirade. He didn't disrupt from what was happening with USA basketball. He just went took it all in, and you could tell that he was pissed off, but he, in a professional way, he's like, okay, all right, bet. That's how you going to do me. Wait till this next season. And to think that he is an all-star player and he still continued to work on mechanics of his game. He was
Oh
already an all-star
yes.
player. He was still already an all-star before he came into this season. But to continue to work on the mechanics of your shot, so that way you can have a quicker release. Not that you already needed it. You were already a great scorer, but to do that, to be an even more potent scorer, crazy, crazy. So no, the fact that they're 8-2 is not a surprise to me. It is a given. All the things that you mentioned also play into the fact of why they have the record that they have. I would arguably say that the record isn't even reflective of how great they can be.
For sure. That
So
they coasted at this point. It's very early in the season. You know, Speaking of things that have happened very early in the season, what about your Warriors getting
oh, we're gonna get
84
that.
put on their head?
We're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into
Oh,
that.
you want
But
to switch
but
into
but
my team
we,
first, huh,
we
ladies
yeah,
and
we want to
gentlemen?
switch into those.
Oh, okay.
We want to switch
I
into
try to. You
those.
see what I did there, ladies and gentlemen? I try
He
to
tried it. He
take that
tried.
heat up off of
He
me.
tried. He tried, but
That's
failed. But we're gonna get into
that's the
those
public.
Lakers.
See, And see, Brandon didn't go to public school, y'all. You don't know. When you're in public school, you have to attack before you are attacked. It's kind of like
a
being
good a good
a
defense
humble
is
bolt
the best
squid. Yeah,
defense is a good
you gotta
offense.
eat before you are eaten, because
He
we are
tried.
cannibals. That's how
He
it
tried.
goes.
He tried. But as I said, we're gonna get into another given, which is the Lakers. My fellow co-host Spillman, who, as you guys will know, is a diehard fan of the team. Not too long ago, was hyped to have the team go 3-0 at the start of the season. To now have them in the last couple of games go 2-4. Spillman, the floor is yours, sir. What are your thoughts?
I want to say that the Lakers are undefeated at home. We are a perfect 4-0 at home. So what that tells me is that that Pacific air that comes off of the ocean and
Ah,
breezes
Pacific
up the
Air. Okay,
coastway, that
gotcha.
helps to rejuvenate LeBron. As he's an older man, he needs to have those sea breezes to give him the powers. He takes the sea breezes in like this, and it makes him play good. So we need to just I'll talk to the commissioner and say, "Hey, Commissioner Silver, can the Lakers just play only home games? We'll just only play the Clippers, so that way, if we have to have an away game, we'll still be home. That works for me. I think that that's how we should do this. Um, I understand that ticket sales are based on how many times people play the Lakers, because you need to fill the house. So I do understand that, because other teams have fans, but those fans don't have any money because they stink. So I just want the people to know that that's okay, that we are doing okay. We're still in the playoff picture, technically. We're eighth seed right now, which is about where I saw my team really truly performing. So no real panic yet. As I'm looking at it, we're only
Oh, I'll put
four
it up
games
there for you.
back. That's right,
Yeah,
4 games back from you guys. 3 games, 2 games back, really, because we're the two. That's only 2 games, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations to your Warriors being 2 games better than us, but I don't want to hear any of your mess.
okay. Nothing else as to why y'all have the record that y'all do. As you said, y'all still still in the playoff picture. Y'all are in the
We're
eighth
in the
seed.
playoff picture, you know. Um,
Anything personnel wise as
D'Angelo Russell had to go to the bench, which is, one of the things that we got going on is D'Angelo Russell is not as advertised. He be playing good, but he don't be playing good somehow, which is interesting. I think he's spending too much time on his hair and not enough time on his game. I feel like when you're doing hairstyles, you can't be doing hairstyles if you're not winning, ladies and gentlemen. Like you could do like Dennis Rodman famously, he didn't start doing his crazy hairstyles till he was on the greatest team of all time. So if you want to do cool hairstyles and stuff, you gotta back that up with wins, because otherwise people are going to say you're too focused on it. And Brandon, this is too small. I can't read this, so it doesn't actually matter what you're putting up on the screen. No one cares to look at this. We know whose franchise has all the championships, and that's what matters. You put that list up. Put the list of championships up if we're gonna be doing stuff. You see this over here, ladies and gentlemen? I can't read that, so it doesn't hurt my feelings at all. I'm not sad. I'm not upset.
it's
No,
okay.
sir.
It's okay. I'm gonna put it up here for everybody to see.
I don't want to see that. Mm-mm. No, sir.
put our standings up here as it stands. But yes, as I said, you guys are still in the playoff picture. But um, what I will say on this, and then it's not too far, not deviating too much from what I've said before, which is the fact that when we're talking about the Lakers, undeniably,
He
LeBron
about to talk
is.
about Bronny. He about to talk about
I'm
Bronny,
saying
y'all.
no. I'm not about to talk about
Okay,
Bronny. I'm talking
good,
about to
good.
talk about LBJ. When we're talking LBJ, all time great. I make jokes about it all the time. He's not the GOAT. He's not, but he is among the greats. He's on that Mount Rushmore of greatest players of all time. Um, and then on top of that too, we have Anthony Davis, who when healthy, he is among the greatest players in the league. But again, that health part of it always seems to be his downfall, and always seems to be something that prevents him from really maximizing on the talent that he has. Because he's undoubtedly a versatile player, talented player, can beat you in a number of ways, whether it's defensively or offensively. See what I'm doing here, Spillman? I'm being objective. Like I believe you guys have some great players, but outside of those two great players, when
Oh
one
yeah,
of them,
it falls off a cliff. We
yeah,
got two top 15 guys, and then everybody else is like, what are we doing here with these guys?
exactly. So if one of them falls, everything is really tied to those two players, and if they can't remain healthy, then I don't really know where your team is going or what's going to happen. And as I mentioned before, when you got pressed about the 3-0, I was like, okay, let's see if AD, let's see if Street Clothes can stay healthy, and you know, on cue is not currently healthy, and as a result, that's where our your Lakers team is standing right now, based on completely dependent upon the health of AD. So, do you feel like there's another player that can kind of be plugged in there to kind of stop the bleeding, so to speak, until he's able to kind of get back on track? Maybe you know better than me. I mean, it's your team.
Um, well, if we take Rui Hachimura and put him on the shoulders of like Vando or something, or they do that fusion dance and they go
Oh
and they
wow,
touch
wow,
fingers and they
wow! We
turn
gotta
into
rely.
one person.
We gotta rely on anime.
Yeah,
We
and they
gotta go
triple
Dragon
their
Ball
power,
Z.
quadruple their power levels. That may work, but I don't think, unfortunately, if AD is hurt for any length of time with this team, we're going to be a lottery team, legitimately. Like, LeBron is good, but even his scoring is down this year. So, what do
I
we do,
mean,
ladies
what
and
what
gentlemen?
else? What else are you going to be able to expect? Like he's still playing at an all time high level, but again, he's not going to be that player that's going to carry the entire team. He's going to be he's going to be a key part of what you guys are doing, but he's not going to
He
be. He's
might be
not.
the best Robin. Robin, if we can win a chip, he'd have to be the best Robin of all time
Yeah,
this year. He'd
yeah.
have to be,
I'm
and
glad you're
and
being objective. Thank you.
Anthony Davis will
Appreciate it.
have to be. He'd have to be a 28-12 guy most of the year if we hope to win a chip. But I don't see that happening because the Nuggets are still the Nuggets, and we can't beat them because
Yeah.
Anthony Davis is a power forward. Even though we be making him play center, he ain't no center. He ain't no center. I have a creative player on my 2K game. I be the center on there. And we're unstoppable because Anthony Davis could just rim run, and just dunk on people all the time. And it's great. I don't play it on rookie or nothing. I play it on the real hard version. I do play it hard. But we definitely need a big man to help him. In the first couple of games, the kid that was originally in New Orleans, he was looking pretty good for us with all the hair. He was looking pretty good. I forget his name,
I
but
know what you're talking about, but I'm brain
yeah,
farting.
everyone, yeah, we don't know his name. He's not important. But he was looking good the first couple of games, but since then he kind of regressed back to the mean. So hopefully he could play well, but we'll have to see.
For sure, for sure. Now I'm going to get into some of the surprises, and I mean, you teased it for in what we were discussing a little earlier, Spillman. But in talking about the surprises, two teams that I wanted to go into that are surprises, and this is again, Spillman, me being objective and realistic: the Warriors and the Cavs. So the Warriors, who no longer have their original big three. I put in quotation marks their original big three. More on that in a moment. They
No,
have
that's
found
the original big three.
success. They have found success with Coach Steve Kerr's unique coaching style this season, playing his 12-man rotation. So, Spillman, I'm going to punt it over to you because I do have thoughts on this, but I'll hand it over to you first. Is this 12-man rotation style that Kerr is utilizing sustainable?
Only if Steph Curry don't get hurt. He had a scare earlier this couple a week ago.
Yeah, he did.
Um, obviously you guys are doing well with your stats. You're number one in rebounding, you're fourth in points per game, and you're fourth in assists. So that ball is moving around, and you sixth in defense. So you're not a bad defense. Six in
Yeah.
opponent's point per game. You're not bad at defense. And I think that when you ran up against the Cavs, the Cavs are just a special breed. They have a true center, and a lot of teams, like we were just saying with the Lakers, teams don't have centers. Like
these
I,
days.
I
Yeah,
know that I know that people be
there's a
like,
lot of
"Oh, you
small
need to
ball
shoot the
happening.
threes, and we got to play the small ball." But if you do not rebound, you cannot end your defensive possession. And I like have this conversation with people all the time because they think it's just something that tall people talk about because rebounds are a tall people thing, and they think that those are, you could just get rebounds in the aggregate. But if you don't get that rebound, like, if you're playing defense hard on the string for 24 seconds and you don't get that rebound, that's 14 more seconds possibly that you're going to be playing defense. And the more of those that happen over a game, the more opponent can separate themselves from you. And it doesn't seem like that's a thing that turns, but it's truly a thing that turns games and stuff. So I think that, you guys, the roster construction is good for most of the NBA, and y'all just ran up against a team that's just built differently. Jared Allen, I think doesn't get the flowers he deserves because he's a traditional big man and he's a kind of a quiet person in general. So, it's kind of hard to be like, oh, who is this Jared Allen guy? He's kind of, he's quiet. He's got the fro. He's just kind of standoffish. He just does his job. But there's a lot to be said about Stretch. He rebounds well. They got Mitchell who's doing crazy. And then they got the forwards in DG. So to me, I'm pretty surprised about the Cavs. I'm happy to see them doing well. After LeBron has left them kind of destitute, but to see them, I mean, he did. Let's be real, he left them destitute. Um, but to see them doing good is just, I just like to see good basketball, and they're just playing the game the right way. I think
Yeah,
everybody was in double figures in the starters in that game that they played against y'all.
yeah.
They had like 12 turnovers, which is generally like how many turnovers you get in a game and a half. So, what can you do with that?
No, I hear you. I hear you. A lot of it that you said, I wanna talk on further, and you were talking about the fact that with Allen, they have a legitimate big man. There is something to be said about that because when we're talking about the league as it stands now, there was a time, and we could probably talk about it in terms of when we were growing up back in the 90s and the early 2000s, where the nature of the game was far different. You had like legitimate players that were playing legitimate positions. You had teams that had a legitimate big man. They had centers in that age that we had with our Ewings and our Shaqs and our Dwight Howards. Like you had legitimate centers, and you also had legitimate guards. You had legitimate forwards. And in today's game, where it's encouraged to have so much versatility, it's become very positionless. And so I think that's becoming a problem with, or a challenge with some teams that are playing that positionless basketball, because now when you're coming up against that challenge of having an actual legitimate big man, you're coming across a challenge that you don't expect. While the game has evolved, as I said, for it to be positionless, there is something still to be said about having a legitimate rim protector, and they definitely have that. So I would also say too is health. Going back to what we were talking about with the Lakers, plays a role into, I feel, what the Cavs are capable of. Last year, the Cavs, were playing pretty solid. They were playing pretty well, and things fell apart when, what was it, when Donovan was
Got hurt.
injured, got hurt, and it kind of sent them into a tailspin. So everything similar to what I would say with the Lakers, everything I feel is going to be really dependent upon health. They do have a lot of athletes on that team. Everyone is healthy and playing on all cylinders. So if they can maintain that and stay healthy, then I feel the sky's the limit for them. But really, that health is going to be that key piece. I don't think it's a matter of talent. It's going to be a matter of health with that team. Now, when talking about the Warriors, you comment on the defense piece, and I feel like the 12-man rotation and the defense piece go hand in hand. If you're able to play a lot of defense because you're able to throw a lot of bodies around, it kind of reminds me of, and people don't notice about us, Spills, when we're talking about what is it, the Chevy Chase League. Shout out to
Oh
folks out
yeah.
there
The
Chevy Chase.
greatest, the highest level of sport is men's adult recreation leagues, if you
Right,
didn't know,
right.
ladies and gentlemen.
But one thing that I will say about our team is that because we played pretty much our entire team, we did, and this is a shout out to buddy player coach Lionel Rogers. If when we're talking about that team and how we ran, we played everybody, so we were able to throw a lot of bodies at you, and because of that, the defense was able to reflect that. When you're playing defense, there's a lot of effort that goes into that, which is why it's difficult when you're only paying a certain rotation of guys, because that onus, that responsibility takes a toll physically on the body of having to not only do offense but to also play defense with a lot of effort. But when you can play a lot of people, that means that your people stay refreshed, because when you after you play one squad, you can put a whole fresh new squad in there, allowing the the original squad to rest up, and then to be able to throw them right back out there and keep throwing players after player after player after player at the opposing team. So I
For
feel like
sure.
that rotation, the fact that he's playing his team that way, is playing into why their defense has been so effective, because they can keep throwing people at you. Now, with that said, I know I was talking about the big three. Buddy Hield is playing far beyond, where I feel a lot of people anticipated he would be capable of playing. I'm still happy, that he was able to do so. I feel like it's been a good addition to the locker room. And this is no slight against Klay Thompson. Klay was pivotal in our title runs that we've had in the past, but because of that situation with his contract and the money that he was being paid, I feel like that affected the locker room and the chemistry between that team. Because if you feel some type of way, you feel like your teammates are being
Should
paid a
feel the
certain
same
amount of
way.
money.
Yeah, it's like,
You're gonna
hey,
feel you're gonna feel a certain way. I don't care how close you guys are. You're gonna feel some type of way of like, okay, y'all paying my coworkers here what they deserve to be paid, but you're not paying me. Like, what's up with that?
that's that
So
stepchild treatment. It's like,
that's
what
what
you
I'm
mean
saying.
these fruit snacks for the little kids? I'm one of the kids. Why can't I get none of these fruit snacks?
And so now that he's with the new team, that kind of pulls that distraction out of the locker room of him feeling disgruntled about not being paid what he felt he deserved, and rightfully so. But I'm just saying, still, I feel like that helped. Not only is the team paying less for Hield than they would have paid for Thompson, but they're still getting, currently, I don't know if it's going to sustain, but at least as it stands now, they're
It's
getting
a
the same
push.
amount of production.
It's a
They're getting
push.
the same
Yeah.
amount of production. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully they can continue on this run. As you said, yeah, health is going to also be a factor, because right now they're running on basically a two man machine, uh, with additional pieces that
With the
are
pieces that work, the pieces
with
are
addi-
good
right,
pieces.
right, the
But them
pieces that
pieces
are
are not gonna work if
your two
the
main
chef,
cogs. Yeah, your
you
two main
know,
cogs.
you got dishwashers and you got bus boys and stuff, but you only got one chef. You only have the
Right.
one chef. So if the chef gets hurt, this is Bobby Flays. That's what we gonna call y'all this year. If Bobby get hurt, don't nobody want to eat at that restaurant. Why are we paying so much for these food? So
Right.
I don't know.
But
I don't know.
I will say this: the fact that you are doing that rotation will help with the health piece, because that means that you aren't running your two main cogs into the ground. I feel like that's an issue that like the Knicks have, um, where like they have a very finite rotation and they play very hard, and because of that, when it comes time for the postseason, they're not healthy enough to really take it to the next level. They have a terrific regular season. Same thing with the Heat too, because they have that reputation of playing very hard. But if you play, if you're not allowing your rotation to help with the effort that's necessary to play defense, and you're only playing a finite number of players, that eventually is going to take its toll on those players. And that's how you get into certain injuries. And then by the time you're getting it after a long regular season, getting into the postseason, while you don't have them available to take you over the hump when it's time to actually go after a title. So, any last thoughts before we switch gears?
Nope. I just want to remind everyone that we got more championships, and good luck to Bronny in the G League. He's going down. I'm surprised we didn't talk about that, but he's been playing
I thought
okay.
I thought I would lay off Bronny because there was enough to talk about with the Lakers being 2-4. I thought I would be
We're
easy on you,
five
man.
and four. We're actually the 10th best team in the NBA if you rank all the things. Like if we could take the team, that's the other thing we could do, Commissioner Silver. If we could take the Lakers and swap them for the Wizards into the Western Conference, the Lakers would
Wow,
be like a 3 seed right now. So
wow.
it just depends on who you play.
You hear that, y'all? He's begging for them to be switched, have the conferences switched just for the
That's
sake of
right.
helping the team. Wow. But unfortunately, getting into our next topic, we did have some somber news. We did have some passings that did happen over this said weekend, or not. I should say not this said weekend. This said week. Excuse me. But yes, we did have some passings. We had the passing, unfortunately, of Quincy Jones, as well as the icon known as Tony Todd passing away. But with uh, we'll start first with Quincy Jones. Um, if you don't know who Quincy Jones is, I will educate you because he, as I said, is an icon when it comes to the world of music. It was revealed by his publicist Arnold Robinson earlier this week that he died last Sunday night at his home in the Bel Air section of LA, surrounded by his family. He has an insane list of honors and awards, folks.
Possibly the greatest of all times.
I'm just going to go down just a couple of them. He has 28 Grammys. He has 2 honorary Academy Awards and an Emmy for Roots. He also received, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing this, but he also received France's Legion d'Honneur, the Rudolph Valentino Award from the Republic of Italy. And just to take it a step further, he got a Kennedy Center tribute for his contributions to American culture. So Spillman, as I said, a titan in the world of music. And I mean, not just in the world of music, that is his calling card, of course, but even across other mediums as well. But what are your thoughts on his passing this past week?
I just think that it's really unfortunate that the great Quincy Jones passed away. The architect of the greatest album of all time. I don't care what you say about the Eagles or Lauryn Hill. Thriller's the greatest album of all time, ladies and gentlemen. It's no skips on that album. Um, I know I heard of you hear the things when people like this pass away. Unfortunately, it's sad, but then you hear crazy stories like um the fact that when they were doing "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough" off the Wall album, Michael wanted to take off the intro part with all the violins, and he was
Yeah.
like, "Please shut up."
Right. No,
he
he's like,
said,
no, we keeping that. We
he said,
keeping that.
"Nah, bro, we not. You're not stepping on this one." He said, "This is blue magic. All you have to do is sell it. You don't have to step on it. Just put it out there. The people will love it." So he's had an ear. So many people have sampled him over the years. So much of his influence is felt. Fresh things like the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, a
Of
cultural
course.
icon, would not have been greenlit without Quincy Jones.
Indeed.
That's that story that they had where the intro to the Fresh Prince of Bel Air was something that Will did because Quincy made him a terrible song about it. He was like, "Hey, I don't think that this is like," because it was like a regular sitcom thing, but Will was like, "This is us. This is my show. We're not just going to, I could do this too." So many great stories about the things he's done in the past. To have someone who's connected to Ray Charles in the early 50s all the way till today with music is just incredible. Can't say enough about Quincy. And then he's a great interview. I
Yeah.
feel like he's got the
Yeah.
stories. He
Stories
has
for
got
days.
stories that we have not even imagined and
Stories
think
for
of.
days.
So just incredible.
I
A
mean,
giant.
what else is there to say other than what you have discussed? You could talk about the collaborations that he's had with Will Smith. You could talk about collaborations that he's had with with MJ, with Michael Jackson, and many others. Just a titan in terms of what he was able to accomplish, and even think about it, even in the time that he was coming up, where when we're talking about persons of color, right, where there wasn't he was very much a renaissance man in a time where there wasn't a lot um, given to people of color and the influence that people of color had in that said industry, in the music industry, and to be a a renaissance man in that regard, to kind of change the game in that regard of, despite being a person of color, still being able to make the impact, despite the perhaps the challenges, even during that time of being in being able to have that level of influence on the industry is quite remarkable and incredible. So again, uh, condolences to family and friends. Great Quincy Jones. Fortunate that we lost him, but we still have his legacy continued in all the things that he has had a hand in, even to this day. Whether it's music that we're listening to at home as we speak, or even shows that continue to have their longevity illustrated in various mediums. So,
Before
uh,
we move on, what's your favorite Quincy Jones moment? Mine is when he turns around on the piano in the Wiz, and he's like,
oh yeah,
"Yeah."
yeah, yeah. That's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one. No, no, I would have to, yeah, I have to second that. That will probably be up there. But I would just say also, if we're talking about just works that he's had a hand in, I mean, I could pick and choose so many from MJ's catalog that
Oh
he
yeah.
has had a hand in, that we wouldn't have it if it weren't for his influence and his input. And then even Fresh Prince of Bel Air, growing up on that show, and how different, just as you were talking about, how different it was to a lot of other sitcoms at that time in terms of what its format was, just the intro song that people still sing to this day, and it was such an unusual intro to have to a sitcom. But
Possibly the most known rap song of all times.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Possibly.
but I'm just saying, like, when we're talking about sitcoms, right? A lot of them kind of have that same format where for those intros where we have the characters, we're showing them looking at the screen, and then we have the pop up of their name, or what they're doing, like, and they have the freeze frame, or some something like that. But that one was like so refreshing in terms of how the intro was for a sitcom. When you were looking at something like that, that just wasn't done for sitcoms. So the fact that we had something refreshing and unique like that was pretty cool. But switching gears, unfortunately, Quincy Jones was not the only passing that we had this week. As I mentioned before, we had another passing, and that was with the great Tony Todd. So if you are familiar with the Candyman franchise, of course, or if you're familiar with Final Destination, you probably recognize Mr. Todd. But just to go into further details about Mr. Todd, he, unfortunately passed this past Wednesday, according to reps in Los Angeles, was 69. He has more than 200 plus film and television credits over 4 decades. But as I mentioned before, he's probably best recognized as the horror boogeyman Candyman from the Candyman horror franchise, and also as the mysterious William Bloodworth in the Final Destination franchise. Spillman, what are your thoughts on the passing of Tony Todd, and what is your favorite Tony Todd film?
Obviously, Tony Todd is one of the scariest characters in the history of characters. Um, you know, um, I don't want to say the name of that movie he was in three times in a
Yes,
row.
right.
In the no,
Right,
it's
right.
like the scene on the Revive where the lady was like, "Shut up!" Like I feel exactly the same way. Like, go ahead, man. Stop playing with that man. Don't even play with him like that. So
Right.
for sure, Candyman, obviously. He had a lot of other bit parts that were very famous, but to me, I just really liked his work. Sad to see a giant like this pass on. It was very unexpected. I didn't think that, I hadn't heard that he was in ill health or anything, but
Yeah,
you know,
neither had I.
we're getting up there in age, ladies and gentlemen. So it just, just a great. I know that you're more versed into horror, so I'll defer to you to give some more of your inflections because I just know not to mess with that man.
So I mean, you mentioned Candyman, and the thing that's crazy. So growing up, believe it or not, as a youngster, I used to hate horror films, like because they scared me to death. But as I started to get into my early adolescence, I started to really like horror films, and so like even though I had seen a lot of those Candyman films, they scared the hell out of me. So like I'll always remember Tony Todd and what he brought to that role. But I will say, as much as people talk about Candyman, and don't get me wrong, it's a very iconic role, and it is a role that I enjoyed that he brought to life. People really sleep on what he did in Final Destination as well as William Bloodworth. It was a very mysterious character, and what the kind of the sense of humor, like the dark sense of humor, and the the other elements and qualities that he brought to that character were pretty cool. People also forget some of the other bit roles that he has had, where if you look at it again, you forget that he was in also in that film. As I said, hundreds upon hundreds of credits. He's in Platoon, but a lot of people forget this, which is celebrating. It's been 30 years since the original. He's also in The Crow. He is the right hand man of the main villain of that film. A lot of people forget that, but he has a role in The Crow, which again came out in 1994. So it's been 30 years. It's crazy to believe that. So even when we're talking about Candyman, we're talking about The Crow, we're talking about Final Destination, which, by the way, going into next year, it will be 25 years because the first Final Destination came out in 2000. I know, the aging ourselves, y'all. If y'all ever
Oh,
seen
I was
first,
behind a thing,
right,
a truck with wood on it on the road
right.
yesterday. I got out there late. I said, mm-mm.
Shout out Jeffrey Redditt, the creator of Final Destination. Shout out to you, sir. But yeah, like it's been 25 years, and we're actually going to get a new installment, a new sequel is coming out next year in celebration of 25th anniversary, which I believe um, um, Mr. Todd will be a part of. So I'm assuming they will have a tribute of sorts to close out that film. But yeah, man, like, and then I didn't even get into this. The fact that those that know us, we're in DC. He was born in DC. He's a DC cat. So like to have someone that's born here in your the place that you were born and raised in as well is pretty cool, and to be able to brag about that, to say, yeah, Tony Todd was from DC, we from the same place, was pretty cool to say. um so yeah, shout out to Tony Todd. There have been a number of times, especially when we're talking about the convention circuit, that I had an opportunity to be able to interact with him. And every time, every interaction, a lot of times you'll say, "Don't meet your heroes," right? Or don't meet those folks that you admire, because they'll disappoint you. That was never the case with Todd. Like all the times that we had interacted, um, he had always been gracious and always been very down to earth and cool. And even like considering all the folks that you meet over that period of time, that I'm sure he met over a period of time, he remembered Like he remembered the prior interactions and said, "Oh yeah, yeah, I remember you. Hey, what's up? How you doing?" So like to be able to have that memory and to remember people and to be able to interact with them, was really really cool. Because I mean, when we're talking about the con circuit, there have been a couple of times that we had crossed paths at San Diego Comic Con, and even in the last couple of years with Rhode Island. There were times that we had where we had a chance to interact as well, and reflect on being from DC. It was really cool to kind of sit down with him and talk about that of being from the same growing up in the same place and talking about how it changed. So again, shout out to Tony Todd. Condolences to family and friends. Unfortunate to lose him. And I don't think a lot of people know about this either, or forget about this. He was actually supposed to have appearances back here in his hometown in DC uh, in the coming year. He was supposed to be a guest at AwesomeCon, which is unfortunate that we wouldn't be able to have him come back home. And he was also going to be a guest at BlurredCon this year. So again, a huge legacy in terms of what he's done in film and TV. Unfortunate that that he has left us, but that legacy continues in terms of his body of work, and is still cherished to this day of what he has accomplished thus far. Any last words, Smillen, before we hop into our trailer alley?
Don't say the name 3 times, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever you do, he's gonna come and get you, especially now.
For sure, for sure, for sure. All right, so diving into trailer alley, if you will. I wanted to go over a couple of trailers that we did get recently, in the last, I guess you could say, 24 hours. We did have a new trailer for Captain America Brave New World Unleashed, as well as a new first look. And I'll put that in quotation marks because we did have a trailer, or we say a teaser, of Thunderbolts, but a new first look, as they have coined it, from D23 Brazil. Spillman, you had a chance to look at the trailers or first looks at both of these said projects, both of these said Marvel projects. We have Captain Brave New World arriving in February and Thunderbolts arriving in May. What are your thoughts, sir?
I guess we'll start with the Captain America one. That
Yes.
is one of the best looking trailers I've seen out of Marvel in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is the first movie where they've truly, or property really, where they've truly established that Falcon is a real guy instead of just some dude that be flying around with wings.
Right.
They've really truly shown, like, his ability to use his powers adeptly. He's taking on fighter jets and stuff in the movie. Just pew, knocking missiles off with the shield and all that. That's pretty cool. Um, and then the teaser of the Red Hulk was definitely pretty awesome. Seeing Harrison Ford as the Red Hulk was just
Indeed.
awesome. I'm just really excited for that. See where they go with it. Um, I think that that's awesome. It's sad that they pushed that movie back a whole year. I think it should have came out this year. I think that would have helped them a little bit, but maybe they needed it. So who cares? Then moving on to the Thunderbolts, that was a pretty cool thing. But I will say before I move on from the Falcon movie, there was a character in there that I didn't recognize that seemed to have a super suit on. Like the scene where they're on the boat dock. Do you know who he's standing next to? That other guy that they showed like 4 or 5 times in the trailer,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but he doesn't
So
say anything. Who that is?
so that's his I'm brain farting on the character's name, but he was his sidekick of sorts in Falcon and Winter Soldier. He was the friend that he made in Falcon and Winter Soldier,
Hmm.
who in the comics he actually becomes the new Falcon once Wilson takes on the mantle of Captain America. So kind of that mantle kind of switches over to him as the new Falcon, as the new sidekick. But he's basically, a character who we were introduced to in Falcon and Winter Soldier. I'll point my finger up because I'll put a link up because we did do a breakdown,
Say-
a episode breakdown. I'll put it up later, but we did have an episode breakdown of Falcon and Winter Soldier because there was only one season of it, but there are a lot of things from that series that carry over to this. I mean, we also have Isaiah as well, who is in the beginning of the trailer and is the character who, from what it appears to be, gets brainwashed just in the same way as Winter Soldier to be able to take out the president. So in the form of Ross, because Isaiah is another character from the comics, who is a character who was given the super soldier serum earlier in the 20th century, not too long after Steve Rogers. You know, I want to say, if memory serves, I got to look at the series again. I want to say it was kind of like in the 50s or the 60s. It may have been a little later than that. So I apologize if I'm getting the decade wrong, but he was someone else who was in that super soldier program who went through that same, regiment as Steve Rogers after he, had gone under ice. So, but there was a whole other backstory with him that was fascinating because despite the fact that he was a super soldier, because of the time in which he was in that program, he still dealt with a lot of the things of that time, which was like racism and bigotry and things like that. So I definitely, suggest to you guys, if you guys haven't seen that series, to check it out. I'm assuming most of you guys out there have, but I know it may be a couple of you who haven't, because there are some things that carry over from that series to this show with those two characters. But I will also say too, I do appreciate some of the things that we do see in this trailer. I know Spillman, you were talking about it was supposed to come out last year. It was supposed to come out last year, but because of a lot of reshoots that were happening, they decided to push it back a whole year. And from what I understand, with test screenings that had been done with the film, that they felt that there wasn't enough action that was, incorporated into this film, especially when we're comparing it to other installments in the Captain America franchise. Because let's be honest, Captain America is probably, among the individual franchises that we have with our characters, is probably one of the top tier ones. And so they wanted to make sure that with this fourth installment, that it still kept that pedigree and kept that same level of awesomeness, if you will, with this fourth installment versus those other three. Because as people were saying with this, or alleging with this film in terms of test screenings, is that it wasn't at the same tier. So from looking at this trailer, it looks like they were able to polish, some things. So I'm definitely, excited to check out to see what they have in store for us. Practicality wise, one thing that I also appreciate is the fact that, just as you said, Spillman, this is a character that's not superhuman. So to have him have a mask when he's in the sky makes a lot of sense, because if you're
Cause he
dealing
be
with that,
flying up there where you can't breathe.
exactly. But I'm saying, even in addition to that, to have that level of velocity when you're moving that fast, that if you're a human being, if and you're not superhuman, that's going to take a toll, on your body. So the fact that
Yes.
they had the wherewithal to say, yeah, he wears a mask in the sky, allows there to be, and let's be honest, it is a superhero film, but it allows you to have some degree of realism
Less
of saying,
suspension, yeah.
yeah, some degree of realism of saying, okay, I can get with that. The only
Because
thing
that
that I,
sonic boom effect was very cool with that.
yeah,
Speaking of which, like the whole like wait for it, and they say pow pow. Like that's right. I'm moving faster than sound, ladies
but
and gentlemen.
I will say this one thing, that even though we do have that level of realism or that attention to detail, I think they may have forgotten about it in one particular scene because we do have a scene where he splits a car in half, and I'm like, you're telling me that he was able to execute that move without his mask because without his mask, his face would have caught fire trying to cut that car in half. Like if you notice, he doesn't have
I'll
the
show
mask
you.
no
I'll
more.
show you, Brandon. I actually have done that before in real life, and it's worked. So I disagree with you. There was some
Okay.
light singeing. I did like it, the fire tickled me. It was like, but I actually did that. I've done that before. It's really possible. That's not a fake thing that can happen. You know, because
Okay.
cars get cut in half cleanly like that all the time. That's not something that's like very hard to do because a
Okay.
car is like a ton of metal and upholstery and wires and whatnot.
Sure,
But
sure.
sure.
But other than that, if we're talking Thunderbolts, I would say, and I don't know if anyone else joins me in this thought, but I'm actually more excited about Thunderbolts than I am about Captain America: Brave New World. I mean, don't get me wrong, you have a lot of parts of Brave New World that are cool. You have, of course, you have Red Hulk, you have the leader, you have all these other elements. You have characters that we haven't seen before in Red Hulk, and we have characters that are returning after years and years of being absent, which is the leader. But they've already kind of blown the surprise of Red Hulk because they've already shown them in a trailer. I feel like they should have saved that and should have saved that into the movie, but now at this point we already seen them, so like it's not, you don't really have that reveal to look forward to and watching the film. But in Thunderbolts, not only do we have an element of characters that we haven't seen in a while, we have characters that kind of work in the gray. They're not in cookie cutter. Not to say they're cookie cutter, but they're not characters that are always going to make the right choice or going to make the expected choice. You know,
Hmm.
they're going to make the unexpected choice. They're going to make they function very much in the gray, but also they didn't make their reveal in the same way that Captain America did. They keep holding back on a character that they have yet to show in their entirety. Because in the trailer, they have this one character named Bob, and for those who really know their comics, they know who Bob actually is. And if you know who Bob actually is, then you know how awesome Bob, I'll put in quotation marks, Bob actually is. And the fact that they still haven't revealed that character yet and what they're capable of makes me really anticipate what they do with that character going into the film. So I'm actually more excited about Thunderbolts than I am about to say Falcon and Winter Soldier. I'm more excited about Thunderbolts than I am with Captain America: Brave New World. But I don't know if you feel the same way.
I can say I'm excited about it, but yeah, I would say that I'm probably more excited for Brave New World because I'm afraid that Thunderbolts will just be a knockoff Suicide
So that's
Squad,
that's fair.
and like
That's
I
fair.
just worry about that because the two team movies, I feel like Justice League suffered from this because they seem like a knockoff Avengers, even though that team came out first technically.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
It just felt like a knockoff because it was so similar in like, oh, these guys don't agree with each other. Now they've got to become a team. It's like, all
Right.
right, we've seen this on the other side. Like, we
Right.
get it.
I
It's
got
like,
you.
except with this one, they're like, oh, these are all possible old bad guys that are getting together to be good guys. So yeah, I feel like that one is a little bit more like, how much can they do to separate themselves from Suicide Squad?
That's
Because
fair.
there's been so many
Anti-hero teams.
anti-hero teams, but not even that, just they've branched off with the characters from Suicide Squad effectively
Yes.
that they really haven't with any of the other franchises from the DC universe. So it'll
Yeah.
just be interesting to me in that way.
I hear you. I hear
Yeah.
you. All right, cool, cool, cool. So, what do you guys think though? Are you guys excited about uh, Captain America: Brave New World or the Thunderbolts first look? Just let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. Are you excited about either? Are there things that concern you about either project? Just drop it down in the comments and let us know. So, getting into our main topic, and as you guys will know, whenever we do our main topic, we also have it here in our background as our uh, background set piece, if you will, talking about not only Orphan 3, but also a new movie being set in the Fly universe. I'll start first with the Orphan. If you guys, hopefully, I don't know if we have any folks that have checked out the prior entries in the installment, but an exclusive shared by Variety last Monday, the third film in this horror franchise has officially been greenlit with Isabel Furman, who plays the title role as Esther, will be coming back for this installment. And I'll put third in quotation marks because there have been two installments. The first, we have the first film, but we also have the second installment, which was more of a prequel. So I guess with this film, if we're talking about this third, this is the third film in the franchise, but chronologically, I can talk today. Chronologically, it is a film that will technically be the second film if we're talking about a timeline. Plot details are currently being kept under wraps, but it was announced by production banner Dark Castle Entertainment, with Lionsgate set to launch the project at the um, uh, pardon me, is going to be announced. It was announced by Dark Castle Entertainment with Lionsgate set to launch the project. So, Spillman, your thoughts on a third Orphan film? Did you see the other installments of the Orphan?
I think I saw the first one. I may have seen the second one on the airplanes at one point. I think that those are decent films. I feel like three installments is a bit much. It's like, how did y'all know that this was somebody else's baby? But famously, they did have that one case of that true crime case where they had the young lady who they said was pretending to be a child, and they emancipated themselves from the young lady, and then we found out that maybe she's not. Um, so that's interesting. We'll see what they do with the orphan film. But to me, the one that I'm really interested of these two is The Fly. One of the things that truly makes horror work for me is body horror stuff. Anything where your body's turning into something that you do not want it to. Even if you're like you know, even in vampire movies, generally vampires want to be vampires. But if you are becoming a vampire against your will, or your body is changing in some way that's against your will, like in the case with The Fly. Those are truly horrific movies to me. I wonder what will happen with The Fly.
Well, I'll
Because
pause you.
as
I'll
we
tell you what. I'm
talk,
gonna pause you. I'm gonna pause you on the fly. Now I'll hop briefly into Orphan, and then we
okay,
can get
cool.
into
Yeah, let's do that then.
dive
Let's do
into the
that.
fly. So if we're talking about Orphan 3, I did have a chance to see Orphan. I do remember catching the first film because I was able to see an advanced screening before anyone knew what this franchise was. This was the first film, and the first film is, I'll just say it's quite something. I can understand how it's had additional installments because it is a unique premise, and how they executed it, and what the twist that they have at the end, which you spoiled Spillman, but the twist that they have there, um, that transpires over the course of that film, I'll never forget seeing that film in theaters. And you know how you have those movies that you can tell audiences are really into, where they are responding and reacting to all the different things throughout the film as you're watching, especially when it's like a horror film or a thriller. This was definitely a crowd rousing film where people were responding to it, just throughout the film you have these little red flags that keep popping up when it comes to Esther, different things that she's doing, different things that she's saying where it doesn't seem quite right. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was really funny to have the audience react to a lot of those moments, especially when we're talking about those audience members that always like to talk to screen like, oh hell no, like like what are they
Mm-hmm.
what are they doing? Like I remember watching this film and audiences being very reactive and talking to the screen, which was very fun and looking at the watching the film. And then I'll never forget like that gasp when people realized the twists that came in that third act of what was really going on with Esther. So to have that and to have an experience like that in a new possible installment is intriguing. But I will say this: now that the cat is out of the bag in terms of what's going on with Esther and what the twist is, I'm curious to know how they're going to find something else that will something else to drive the story forward that will allow it to be interesting or to be refreshing, because without now that you have that twist in there, I don't know if there really is much else going on there that will keep audiences interested other than it just being a slasher film.
Yeah,
uh
because like with stuff like that, it's like, don't these people got Google? Wouldn't they look up, hey man, this is weird little girl that we just adopted. What's going on with her?
right, exactly. So
Something's
yeah, I don't
wrong
know, man.
about you.
I
Yeah.
don't know, man. So as much as I like the franchise, I will say that I'm curious to know what new trick they have up their sleeve to bring some new, fresh element to the franchise. Because now that you've already let the cat out of the bag of who Esther is, I don't know if there really is much else going on there that you could do to add some new, interesting component to the franchise. Going into the fly, because I know you wanted to get into the fly. um when it comes to this project from and this is excuse me, this is a story this past Monday. I don't know what it was about this past Monday, because the same thing happened with the Orphan. That was a story from this past Monday, but anyway, I digress. In an exclusive with from Deadline, this is going to be a new film, which will be done by, and I apologize if I'm butchering your name, Nikiyatu Jusu. It's in development. This new fly film based on, of course, David Cronenberg's body horror masterwork from a couple of it's crazy to believe a couple of decades ago, a good couple of decades ago. She will be writing and directing it for 20th Century Studios and Churnin Entertainment. Right now, details are being kept under wraps, but the article stresses that it will be set in the universe of Cronenberg's film rather than being a straightforward remake. So, Spielman, now I will punt it over to you. In terms of the prospect of having this new fly film, which, as the story suggests, will not be a direct remake, but will be set in the universe of the Cronenberg film.
So um, this process of, Cronenberg, the king of body horror, the
Yes.
absolute king of body horror, ladies and gentlemen. That it's literally an effect. Like on Rick and Morty, Cronenberg is like a dimension in and of itself. It's like just it's a gross dimension. You don't want to go there. You don't want to be the Cronenberg Rick and Morty or what
Well,
have
it
you.
depends. It depends. If you're a
Um,
horror person, maybe you do. But go ahead.
I don't know. Looking at what he does with people's bodies in movies does not make me think of anything where I would be like, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and live in this world. I don't want to live in any of those worlds, but it's just interesting to me because again, Cronenberg is very big on visual, and physical effects, actually real things that you can actually see. He
Practical
doesn't
effects,
really
yeah.
do practical effects. He does not do the CGI too much, but I don't see how you could make a movie like The Fly in 2024 or 2025 without using CGI. I feel like CGI is going to be a big part of the movie, so I'm interested to see where it goes with that.
I hear you.
You know, things are not gonna like I love CGI. I also like practical effects, but like there's some things that one does well and some things that other does well. Like CGI is good for fight scenes and stuff. Like fight scenes with practical effects often look hokey because once you try to make an inanimate object look like it's fighting, it don't look right. But it looks real because it is a real thing. So it's like your mind knows that it's the real thing. But in CGI, your mind also knows that this is kind of a cartoon that we're looking at up here. So I'm interested to see where they go with that. Hopefully, our boy Jeff Goldblum pops up for a
Jeff
second, like as a cameo, or somebody says, I don't think you should be messing with teleportation or something like that. Cool, but I'm interested. Um, you know, Great Simpsons episode based on The Fly. One of
Oh,
the
yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
holiday Treehouse of Horrors
Or yeah,
episodes. So
yeah,
yeah,
for sure. I
yeah.
know
So
about that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But I'm interested to see that this is the of the two. Even though it's a retread, use tires again, ladies and gentlemen. Hollywood loves to retread. They don't go to the dealership and buy new tires. No, sir. No, sir. They get their $60 and they buy that retread tire every single time. And they be like, "But you go get a nail in the tire and it's going to go bad again on you." But they be like, they don't care. So we'll see what it does.
We will.
Very
We
interested to
will.
see in it. I like that the original director's on it, and it's in the universe, and it's not going to be a direct um remake or reboot or anything. So I'm interested to see what is going on.
I'm curious on what I think that when we're talking about what they're saying and it being in the universe, that's their way around kind of like what you were talking about. That's their way around people's skepticism about it being a remake. In my opinion, I believe that it is a remake. They're just using that terminology because they're ever so sneakily utilizing the plot to say that it's in the universe. I feel like it's probably going to be, and I have no proof of this, but I have a feeling that it's going to probably be like what we had with the Candyman recent installment. For anyone that has seen that installment, it's set in the universe of Candyman. The events of Candyman did happen prior to the events of the most recent film that we had, but it still continued the story and that legend of Candyman. So you were still kind of able to have your cake and eat it too. It was really a remake, but the way that they kind of got around people kind of being pessimistic about it being a remake is by saying that it was in the universe. I think the
Yeah.
same thing's going to happen with this film, where it's going to be because there is this type of film that has happened when we're talking about reboots and sequels called a requel. And if you guys aren't
Hmm.
familiar with that term of a requel, basically what it is you have a film that is set in the world, the timeline of a given franchise, but they decide to pick up the story at a specific point, or they just come to a decision of where they're picking up that story in the already existing timeline of the original property. So I feel like it's probably going to be more of a requel where it's going to when we see the film and they title the film, it's going to be called The Fly, just like you have the film Candyman. It's just called Candyman. It's not called Candyman 5 or Candyman 6. It's just called Candyman.
Hmm.
This same is going to be called The Fly. It's going to address and talk about events of the prior film, which is how they'll get it, be able to explain the fact that it's in the same universe. But it, in essence, beat wise, in terms of story beats, in terms of how the film plays out, is very much going to be a remake of the film. The thing that's going to be interesting, though, I do like the idea that you bring up of Jeff Goldblum being having kind of like a meta cameo, because for those of us who have seen, his iteration of the Fly, that David Cronenberg film, we know that he dies. Spoiler alert! It's been years, so I don't feel like it's much of a spoiler. He did die,
Ain't no
but
spoilers in that.
but
Yeah.
um, even though he died, it would be cool. Maybe it's a different person. He's playing a different person that just looks like Jeff Goldblum, and they kind of have like a meta thing where he comments on, "Oh, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't do this," or "I don't think this is the right decision to make." But a lot of people forget about this too. There was a sequel to The Fly with
There
Eric
was.
Stoltz, and so I would be interested to see if they do decide to do this film, if he appears in the film, because spoiler alert, his character does not die. Being the son of our main character in the first Fly, his character does not die. So I would be curious to see how that story continued, and if they address that, since it's in the same universe as this film, it will give an opportunity to provide further closure or further developments of how that film or how his story progressed. Like, did he really uh, uh, resolve his issue with the fly genetics that he had? Like, was he able to truly, rid himself of it, or did he just think he did, and maybe there is some continuation of that going into this film, or they even like mention perhaps what happened in that film. So there are some threads, some plot threads that they could carry over to this film, even though I know it's not as heralded or as liked as the first film. If you're going to be set in the universe, you can't. I'm sorry, you can't ignore that film. So you're going to have to not only address that, but address the events of the second film too. That perhaps not as many people either saw or liked.
For
Um,
sure.
so we'll see. So I am interested, especially in the climate of today's effects. There is a lot that can be done when we're talking about practical effects. I hope they don't get tempted into doing a lot of CGI, because, just as
Money
you said,
wise, they kind of have to. It's just not
I
enough.
get, I get
It's
that, but
it's a lost art.
it is. But I'll say this: I get that there would be a temptation to do CGI, but considering the landmark in terms of practical effects that Fly film was, I feel like it would be a missed opportunity to not try to recapture that by adhering to practical effects. There are a couple of reasons why I say that. One, if we're talking about a film like this, they're not. I don't feel like they're going to have a huge budget. I feel like it's still going to be a film that has a low budget. And when you're dealing with a low budget, a lot of times you're relying on practical effects. So hopefully that forces them to rely on practical effects if they have a lower budget. But also, if we're talking about body horror, I don't know when we're utilizing CGI, however way you want to coin it, if we're using those types of effects that it can accurately capture the anatomy of a body, right? A lot of times when
Yeah.
we're talking about body horror, the way that it works is if we can realistically feel like that is a person, or that is something that's happening to a physical body, something that's physically there. And if it's not physically there, sometimes when we're doing it with CG, it can't really realistically capture things that a body would do, like reactions that a body would have. And I feel like you can more accurately capture that if you're using practical effects over CGI. So hopefully, I don't feel like they're not tempted in doing that just because they can, but that they actually use practical effects. So, but I don't know what your thoughts on it are.
Like I said, I hope that they do more of them, but it's a lost art. Um, it's one of those things that, what's up, Ray?
What's up?
There you go. Gang, gang. But we'll see. I feel like Cronenberg, he's got enough of a cachet that he should be able to do something like this. I feel like, you know, he's one of those guys that's a master of something. So I feel like you let him, like much like a Quincy Jones, you let him cook with his own ingredients. You don't tell him what we about to be putting in this soup or what have you. So I think that that will lend to our hopes. So we shall see. We'll see. We'll pay attention to this one. I feel like this is a real chance for them to revamp the horror films for Universal. I know they tried to do it with the Wolfman and stuff, but I think that trying to
Which is
go
still
for the
coming, by the way.
ones, sure, but I mean with the ones that are like from the 50s and stuff, unfortunately, the people who are alive who saw those movies really and love those movies, they ain't around no more. So, not to be crass about that or morbid, but like, you got to do something a little bit more modern. So doing something from the 80s that are horror mainstays and stuff, because The Fly is one of those horror mainstays. The whole concept of we accidentally merge genetics because of we were trying to do teleportation, and like that also turns into a genetic merging machine, is a new level of something that we really don't, like, before then had not really been explored. So I think it'll be very interesting.
Yeah, indeed. And then I also say it'll be interesting to see if it's going to be set in the fly universe, as they say. Are they still going to use the fly, or are they going to use some other insect as the thing that kind of, I guess, makes it different? Because I mean, you could say the fly, but I mean, you could put your own spin on it in some type of way of it, yeah, being the fly, but having some other component or some other twist to it. So uh
Hmm.
definitely interested to see, what they do with that. But that's going to wrap up today's show. I want to thank you guys so much for watching This Week in Pop Culture this week. And as always, I will first punt it over to Spillman. Spillman, can you tell folks where they can find you?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you can find me um at Truly Spill right here on Instagram. It's community day today, but I'm not going to plug my Pokemon Go because Brandon is a hater, and he doesn't
What?
know that you got to catch them all. He doesn't know that.
Wow.
He's
Wow. The
he's he's
hater man.
shamed me for my blurredness, and that's
I
literally
did
what we do
not.
on this podcast,
I
ladies
did
and
not.
gentlemen. That's terrible.
Hey, plug away, bro.
It's
Plug
too late
away.
now. It's too late. I'm gonna let you live in the shame. I'm gonna let you live in the
Wow.
shame.
Wow.
Yeah.
So again, I want to thank Spielman for as always coming on and reflecting on a lot of the stories that happen in entertainment. And I will be transparent and say I did not shame Mr. Spills with his talk of Pokemon. Share away, sir, of and plug away on your Pokemonness.
You hear how he's saying the word even? He's saying it like he's putting up parentheses like this. He's saying it like he's like Pokemon. That's how he's saying it. He's saying it like how your mom would say it when you was not doing what you was supposed to be doing. But oh, you want to be playing Pokemon instead of doing the homework, Mon? No, sir. Terrible.
But you can find me well, you find me on X first at Brandon Troy ENT. But you can also find me on IG at Brandon Troy _ENT. So with that out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, and see y'all soon. Peace.
Peace. Peace. Peace.